Um, Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Neurodiversity Gold podcast with me, Jude Morrow. And this is going to be the very first episode with the new jingles in the start and the end of the podcast. We got those made actually last week, and they were delivered yesterday. So I hope you all really, really like them. I love them to death. I think they're fabulous. And usual plugs at the top of the episode. Um, our podcast page has been fixed because after getting literally hundreds of emails in the last few days from the last episode that we put out, the podcast page has now been fixed, and that is neurodiversitygoldpodcast.com. And this podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts and everything else. Support us and support the work we're doing at patreon.com/neurodiversitygoldpodcast. We're looking for executive producers for the podcast. To help grow it, build it, and get it to every single corner of the earth, north, south, east, and west. So today's episode is a guest episode again, and I'm joined by a fellow author, workshop facilitator, speaker, and pretty much an ND busybody like we all are, and has also recently written a book as well that I can't wait to share with you all. And I am absolutely delighted to welcome Kelly Chester to the podcast. Kelly, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
I'm absolutely delighted that you're here. And there was something I was meaning to ask, and I'm just sort of stealing this from your LinkedIn profile. And everybody listening, I would strongly recommend following Kelly Chester on LinkedIn. Is I is the Let me see. Sorry, just the name that has left me is the Stretch Zone. And I know that it's sort of yoga based or exercise based, and I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, a lot of people get it mixed up. Stretch zone is about stretching your mind and your body. I've always been very much into psychology, and it's about bringing the mind-body connection. I do an exercise called yin yang, and yin yang is not the yin yang yoga. It's a martial arts, and it comes from Shaolin Kung Fu. And I was always very clumsy as a child, and coordination and everything. So this yin yang really helped me to get my body to work with my mind, because if my body's not working with my mind, that's when I start falling over. So that's why I really started it. So it's important to get your mind connected with your body.
Absolutely. Where I be the biggest believer in healthy body, healthy mind. And speaking of Shaolin Kung Fu, right? Because to be honest, I was sold at that part. The the
Okay.
the, the kind of Shaolin Kung Fu principle. And I know you have like your yin and yang exercise. So what is that? Could we do it now live on the air to demonstrate it?
Oh, it's good job I put full clothes on.
Well, you know what? It's the video doesn't go out everywhere, so it's really hard.
Now, Zoom calls. Some of us don't, we dress at the top, but not always at the bottom. No, that was a little joke. But yeah, all what I do, I adapt it to chair. So
Okay.
a lot of people can't do all the standing exercises. So anything that I create, I make it always inclusive. Before all this inclusive business became trendy or anything, I was doing it 25 years ago. So I work with people with physical and sensory impairments, which it was called back in the day. So I just created an exercise system. So yeah, you can do it in the chair.
And what I was going to say was with obviously neurodiversity into the kind of ND world is, I mean, because with yoga personally or stretching or anything sort of physical like that, it was never something that personally I would have kind of dabbled in because I would feel that I'm too clumsy for it. But my clumsiness is very selective because I can throw darts in a pub, but don't ask me to carry the tray of pints. I wouldn't be able to do that. Where I'd probably drop the tray of pints and then throw a bullseye afterward. Where I'm good at coordination that way, but in other ways, definitely not. So, I mean, what are the benefits of what you do and in terms of like ND coordination and stuff like that?
Well, I wouldn't drop the tray of pints. I fell a few times with a bag of chips in my hand or a pint in my hand. and haven't spilt a drop. So I've got that bit.
Well, that's that pretty much nailed because you know what, and I should actually follow my own advice here. Like I'm a big believer in exercise and stuff like that, and getting active and getting moving somewhat.
Yeah.
And I suppose kind of with the work that you do, because I know you do a lot of things, is that, what do you see the benefits are to ND people who go through your program of work and who work with you?
Well, I'm coming from a personal perspective today. The last week, I've been doing my own heading. And I think this is quite common with people with neurodiversity, is we have a lot going on in our heads and we've got a lot of talent, but sometimes it's knowing how to channel it properly. So this morning, I went for a run. I don't do running, but I needed to get that angst out, that rage, because we do have that. I'm calm a lot of the time, but sometimes it builds up and it needs to be released. So that's why it's just so good to find something that you love. So I always try and encourage people to do exercise that doesn't seem like exercise. This morning, before this session, to get me nice and calm, I was having a kitchen rave. So I had the Macarena on, I had a bit of Prodigy, I had some jungle music, and that just
Nice.
helps me to calm the mind. So I don't know whether I've got ADHD. I haven't been diagnosed with that, but my mind is quite busy a lot of the time. So that calms me down. So to do the yoga, I've actually been having a little rave in my head to get nice and calm.
Well, why would you need to get nice and calm? For here, I'm a black belt and making guests calm. I mean, this is a relaxing, soothing experience for everybody that
Oh,
comes
I
here.
would do that for anything that I'm doing. I have my little rituals that I have.
Yeah.
Like I've got a candle burning. I will do all these little rituals for anything that I do. So when I'm going online to teach, I am putting as much effort onto the online, lighting the candles, getting the lighting done, and just getting in that space. Because when you're teaching exercise, I'm a Reiki master, so I like to tap into the energy. So anyone who comes to my classes, I am not doing it for my benefit. I am tapping into their energy and I'm adapting to them. And this is why I am doing what I'm doing, because I've had so much horrific stuff over my life, going on to courses that they think I need, but I know what I need. And when people come to my classes, I'm not telling them what they need. I might not give them what they want sometimes, but I'm giving them what they need. And I don't suffer fools either. I'm not pussyfooting around anybody. I don't faff about. I can't do faffing about people. There's no hand holding. I will for a little bit, but they need to have that get up and go. So just because you've got a disability, I don't give you any leeway. I'll give you an example of that. I used to look after people with severe physical disabilities. Some of them didn't have limbs, but I'd just say, listen, if you haven't got another leg, just do double on that one.
And it's good. It's good to improvise and adapt because whenever back in the dark ages, whenever I was a social worker before getting into all this advocacy carry on, was like in care homes and in certain facilities, they bring in like exercise instructors or activity coordinators and stuff. And more often than not, they were kind of more group based. And, it was very, very hard to get a group based activity that suited everybody. But, having that individual inclusive element, I think is a really, really positive thing, especially when there's such a wide range of people. And what I wanted to ask was, I mean, your kind of your personal background, like what has basically led you up to this moment of kind of sitting here and talking and spreading the message about what you do? Like, what was your background?
Well, I thought I was perfectly normal until I got, well, be perceived normal until I got to school. And then when I got to school, that's when I started to realize that I was a bit different. So I couldn't grasp what was going on in the classroom, like copying from the chalkboard. I kept falling behind. So because I was falling behind, I just started to have my screensaver moments more often, gazing out the window, going on to different planets, because I was thinking, this isn't working for me. So I got told I was naughty, disruptive. Also, I just was getting so frustrated because I was trying so hard, yet I didn't get anywhere. So I'd turn up every day, and then it come to exam time, and I'd get like D's, E's, and F's. So I did really crap at school. So it's only when I left school I really started to develop properly. So my school years was just a waste of time, and I've just blanked them out because it was a horrific time for myself. And the reason why I'm speaking out now is because I don't want people to go through what I do. And I've got an 11-year-old son with dyspraxia. It took me 7 years to get him diagnosed. I knew from the age of 3 he had dyspraxia because he kept having falls and accidents, and he had the lax muscles like myself. And we have only just got in the system, and he's now 11 and in the big school. And then they keep trying to discharge us because I function really, really well until I don't. So if systems are taken away from me, then I will start getting that rage and that overwhelm, and this is too much. Because we function very well in society if the provisions are there. But if you're a carer, you're a lone worker, you're a single parent, that is a challenge in itself. But if you add a hidden disability on top, and you're trying to navigate what people take for granted, like filling in forms, opening a bank account, reading people's faces and body language, we don't always pick all that up. And it's like the Queen's funeral. We're all told to mourn. I didn't know how to deal with all that because I didn't want to be in that situation, because we can get very on it in our own heads, and that was where the difficulty was. And I could have ended up in prison, like a lot of us who have these difficulties can end up in prison because we're just not understood. So I got into boxing, and that was one of the best things that I got into.
Boxing?
Yes, that is another story. I used to train with Clinton and Duke McKenzie, who are 3 times world champion boxers back in the 90s. So I bring all the boxing into my classes as well.
What? I've known you a while and you've never mentioned this, because I had, and this will be from last week's episode, I had Sean Smith on, who's an ADHD counselor, psychotherapist, pizza chef. And, he told the story about how he was a blackjack dealer. And I was like, you're a blackjack dealer? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, you never told me this. So, okay. So, right. So back to the boxing. Did you compete?
No, back then, Duke was very adamant about women and protecting their assets. So it didn't really come into a few years later, but it wasn't really seen as the norm, women boxing, until probably about 5 years after I started training. But then the boxing didn't become enough, and I still was having this inner rage inside me, because I was a tomboy growing up. I know they use a different term now, but there was like, oh, ladies are not meant to swear, ladies are not meant to act like that. And I'd be really nice girl, calm girl, and then I'd just let loose. so that's why when I wrote my book, I called it Unfiltered, because I'm becoming more me now again, back to how I was before I went to school.
And yeah, I saw, like, your book and your cover and stuff over the last kind of couple of days. And
Yeah.
I looked at it, was like, Unfiltered, what a title. I was like, that works. That works tremendously.
Yes.
So on to book writing now, because
Yeah.
let me just ask, is your book out first of all?
It certainly is. I don't know if this will be the wrong way round. Yes, wrong way
It's the
round.
it's absolutely the right way around.
Ah,
And
yeah,
just for the audio, is Kelly's holding up her book cover, which is her beautiful smiling face with Unfiltered, the title, and Kelly Ann Chester at the bottom. That's a lovely cover.
and the back is the brain and the white noise and what you're filtering in. So it's what you're putting into your mind.
So, what was your writing process like?
The writing process was absolutely beautiful. It took me a year to write. I was totally ready. I've been keeping a journal for the last 20 years because I learned how to do Reiki. Reiki 20 years ago was seen as a bit woo woo and crazy, and now this holistic therapies are really flourishing out there. But it was a fantastic thing for me to learn because it's a watch, feel, and do. So that for me, I'm very hands-on. I like to be able to do things, and you do it repeatedly over time. Same as the kung fu, that was brilliant because you kept repeating set that over and over again. This 10,000 hour thing to become an expert. So writing the book, I found a beautiful publicist, and I just started mind mapping, and I put my mind map together, and then I wrote the end first, and then I worked my way backwards.
And you know what, actually, see with that kind of writing process, where I mean, now I've written 4 books.
Yeah,
I've done that. I've because with my well, my next book's out in 4 weeks' time, which is The Ghosts of Riots Past. I had a stab at writing a novel, and
fantastic.
I thought, oh dear, where I started at the back and worked at the end of the book and worked my way back. And I'm really happy to not be the only person who has done this. And it's funny you say where you've been keeping a journal or a diary, where I always write things down. I wouldn't put myself like as a diarist. I mean, not like
No,
Anne Frank or Adrian Moles or the One Bee Kid. I wouldn't be in that category of diarists. But whenever I did CBT, whenever I was maybe 25, 26, I kept the wee notebooks that I wrote in for everything. And
yeah,
that's what Why Does Daddy Always Look So Sad became, where it was sort of like my life story and looking back at all my various traumas and, the shitty things that happened to me and the shitty way I treated people as well, because of my own kind of denial fueled self-loathing. And I
yeah.
suppose with Unfiltered, is that sort of the same idea where it's just been kind of like a collection of your writings over the years compiled into one volume?
There is a real structure to it.
Mm,
Even though it seems like my stuff is very chaotic. I
mm,
actually like things really neat and tidy. So it's gone through all the different stages of my life, my personal development years, the Reiki years, my travel years, the adventure years. There's some funny stories in there as well about me jumping out of a parachute, jumping out of a plane and going the wrong way and nearly ended up in a lion's den. And I almost landed on a sheep. So, yeah, and then I picked up my parachute, went to a pub, and I hoped someone would offer me a pint, but they didn't. And I says, I ain't got any money on me. I says, I'm lost. I've just jumped out of a plane, don't know where I am. So there's like real funny stories and adventures because I think when we have got that creativity, we are a bit naughty at times and we're not very good at doing what we're supposed to do.
did you just like, I'm assuming whenever you jumped out of this plane that there was somebody strapped to you?
No, it was a
You did a
time when
solo
I did it on
parachute
my
jump?
own.
Right, hold on a minute. I think I've got something now. Everybody that's listening to the Neurodiversity Gold podcast, I think I've made a breakthrough discovery, and that Kelly Chester is DB Cooper. It was you that did. Kelly Chester is DB Cooper. You did a solo jump with the parachute. Like, was it a ripcord parachute, or did the parachute open itself? Like, I mean, what? Why
I
would you do a
opened it. I
solo
had to
jump?
open it.
Did you have any training?
Only an afternoon.
Okay, that's really cool because funny enough, that's why even with me, I don't know about you, but I'm somebody that jumps from one thing to the next, very quickly. I finished this book about the Order of Malta First Aiders in my hometown, and my next
Yeah.
book is about DB Cooper. The whole mystery that some guy who called himself Dan Cooper in 1971 went onto a plane, had a bomb in his briefcase, said, "I want $200,000 and four parachutes." He got the money in the parachutes, jumped out of the plane, and was never found until today.
I was born in 71. I'm
You've got the
reincarnation.
timeline. Like, so I do tend to kind of jump from one thing to the next, but you know what? Because I know for that book, for that writing process, I am going to have to do a parachute jump because I can't describe a jump without actually doing it. So if there's a place where you can go where you can learn to jump out of a plane and open your own parachute,
You can't do
then
that
yeah, I'm up for it.
anymore. This
Ah,
somebody had actually died a couple of weeks earlier, so that was
ah.
playing on my mind as well. So, but I was doing it for charity, so I didn't want to let anyone down. So, yeah, there was a bit of darkness there, but I did it. And then I put Tom Petty in my book saying, it's free falling.
And where can people get Unfiltered? Because I know somebody that wants to get it as me. So where do you get it?
Yeah, it's actually on Amazon at the moment.
Lovely.
It's under either Kelly Chester or Kelly Ann Chester. Somebody asked me why I put my middle name there, because my mum always used to call me Kelly Ann when I was younger. So it's about my family, and and they inspired me. It was my granddad that inspired me to be myself, because he knew that I was a little bit different, but he loved that about me. So he was the one that encouraged me to actually be myself. So I am very authentic. I am very real, and Unfiltered is people's noticed a change in me recently. I've had a few people unfriend me because I am proper saying it as it is, because I think this is an important thing. If you've got neurodiversity, we've had to act all our lives. Been told I've been a brilliant actress, a drama queen, all of that. But I was acting because I was acting like they were saying I was supposed to act. But that wasn't my natural way of acting. My natural way of acting is quite free spirited and outspoken and unfiltered. And I'm not talking unfiltered where you're disrespectful to people or misogynistic or sociopathic, but in a fun way where you can really be yourself. I did have times where people say you shouldn't say that, you're not allowed to do that.
With me, I'm a big faux pas person. I was at a book fair that shall not be named, okay? And I'll give you one of the Jude Morrow prime examples of being unfiltered.
Yeah.
I was at this book fair and it was abroad, right? And I had to do like a talk and I gave the talk and this was the second book. This was my second book. And I did the talk and then sort of like I called him my handler. He he said to me, when you go down to the press interviews, look out for the American journalists. And I was like, okay. And I went down the steps, and do you ever see like after a football match, they have the manager and the sponsor board behind it? It was that kind of situation. And somebody sitting to my left who was interpreting it for Spanish, and then another one for Chinese. And I went in, I sat down, and I was looking around, And it came into my head, the American journalists were the ones wearing the high vis jackets with their paper written on the high vis jackets and wearing their press badges in the press area where only the press area were allowed to be. So I was like, right, okay. And I was answering some questions. One of the high vis jackets put up their hand, and the person beside me pointed to her, and she asked me, who's the rudest media outlet in Europe? And I said, American journalists. And that didn't go down too well, but it was just like an unfiltered kind of moment where I can be very prone to faux pas now and again. I'll ask you a question. Speaking of filtered, right? Because I made a grave error a couple of weeks ago. I'm away on tour again in a few weeks, and I approved the posters and the videos and stuff. And then I shaved my beard off. So I'm going to be going on stage not looking like the posters, where I've dramatically changed my appearance. So what do you think? Beard or no beard?
I actually mentioned that on our 8-week training, didn't I? I
Yeah.
actually pointed out to you. I said, "Oh, you need to change your picture."
And all of the posters were printed, all the video elements and everything, that's all been put out.
Yeah. Oh, I think you might have to grow your beard just for that to be consistent, the continuity.
Yeah, I might have to and then get rid of it straight away again after that.
Yeah.
I might have to do that because I mean for working on my like book that's to come out in a few weeks, by the way, plug. It's called The Ghosts of Riots Past. It's out on the 27th of October. Pre-orders are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everywhere else. But I was meeting with first aid volunteers from my city at that time, from the late 60s, early 70s. And most of them, are in their late 60s, some are in their late 70s, some in their 80s, a couple in their 90s.
Yeah.
And whenever I went to visit them with no beard, they were a bit spooked. They were like, who is this guy? But then whenever I opened my big stupid mouth, they knew who I was then. But yeah, changing the appearance isn't good. So what does the future hold then? I mean, what have you any big plans or exciting things happening in 2023?
Yeah, things are really, really happening right now. I'm part of a business festival next week, which
Ooh,
is part of my local community. So they're putting on a business festival for the whole of the small businesses within Lincolnshire and Grimsby. It's the first time they've ever done it. So I'm putting myself out there for everything. It's my birthday next week on the 4th of October, and I'm going to
happy
be
birthday to you.
speaking. Thank you. I'm going to be
Mm.
speaking at the business festival event. On the Thursday, I've actually put a workshop together. Needed to put it on for free, find a venue, and I'm doing a 2.5 hour workshop on neurodiversity and how you can help with burnout recovery, the strategies that I've learned over the last 20 odd years of how you can really include people with neurodiversity within the workplace and how they can actually learn from us. Because I'm all about, I don't like to separate us from anybody else. And I don't want to separate what they call the neurotypicals, because I think there's a lot more of us out there than we think, but it's just that a lot more people do as they're told. And it's just easier just to follow the systems. But when I get talking to people and they've read my book, they go, God, that's me. I never knew that. Or they'll be, oh, my son's like that, or my grandmother's like that. So it's just helping people to just become more self-aware. So I'm really excited about doing this event next week. And I'm also doing a retreat day. I run wellness events. So I'm doing a retreat for my birthday. So I invite some of my clients along, and then I'm baking. So I like baking. My son's baking. So we'll be making like brownies and cupcakes and things like that. I've made soaps. So I like to do all these nice things for my clients. It's the little touches.
Lovely.
So
It's
because
it sounds like you have a lot. You have a lot going on. It's great.
Oh, most definitely. And then I need to get the book back out there again, because during the summer, I wanted to spend some time with my son because he's 11. Um, so we did some adventure stuff again. I did high ropes and zip wires. So he's
Quite the
got that
daredevil.
adventurous side.
You're quite
Yeah.
the daredevil. I like that. That's really fun. And you know what? You have loads of great stuff coming up in the pipeline. No doubt 2023 will be a great year of growth. And I, you know, and I look forward to supporting you. And all of us here look forward to supporting you in any way we can through it. So I suppose the last question is, for all your plugs, where can people do you work? How do people get in contact with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn, got Amazon, but you can find all my platforms on my website, which is the Stretch Zone mindgym.co.uk.
Okay.
So that's also
And
connected to my fitness app as well.
oh, lovely. And what about Facebook, LinkedIn? I know you have a page,
I
stuff like
do.
that. What is the page called so people can find you, can speak to you, can
Oh,
reach
you
you?
you mean my LinkedIn page? Was that?
Have you got a Facebook group?
I have got a Facebook group. It's called Diversity of the Mind. I only started it recently because I had so many different groups, and I've condensed it into Diversity of the Mind. So I've put in there, I'm a bit of like a round, what is it, the round trees randoms? It's not fully structured. You don't always know which Kelly you're going to get, but you're going to get real and authentic.
Absolutely. And you know what? This has been an absolutely fabulous. And I love talking to you. I could talk to you all day, but the podcast episodes are limited to how long they can bloody
That's
be.
okay. Yes.
But you know what? This has been fantastic. You have been absolutely fabulous. I can't thank you enough for coming on. And once again, the plugs at the end of the episode. You can download, stream the podcast from any podcast provider where you get your podcasts at neurodiversitygoldpodcast.com. I've been Jude Barrow. Kelly Chester has been wonderful, and I'll see you next week for the next episode of the Neurodiversity Gold.